Hello and welcome. Find a quiet space, extinguish the lights of your world, and prepare to journey with me. Tonight, we are not just telling stories about the departed. We are venturing into their very homes. We are visiting the cities of the dead. Every culture throughout the grand, sprawling narrative of human history has been defined by two fundamental questions: how we choose to live and how we choose to treat our dead. The monuments we build for our deceased, from a simple, humble gravestone to a towering, sky-piercing pyramid, are far more than just markers of loss. They are mirrors. They are architectural reflections of our deepest beliefs, our most profound fears, and our most desperate hopes for what, if anything, lies beyond the veil. They are cities built not for the living, with their fleeting concerns of commerce and comfort, but for the silent, eternal majority who have come before us. But some of these cities of the dead are different. They are not peaceful places of serene remembrance. They are places of profound, lingering mystery, of palpable energy, and of terrifying, persistent legends. They are places where the boundary between the vibrant world of the living and the silent realm of the dead feels porous, brittle, and dangerously thin. Places where the absolute silence of the tomb is sometimes broken by a whisper from the other side, a spectral sigh carried on a subterranean breeze. Tonight, we will embark on a grand tour of two of the most famous, most enigmatic, and most mystifying necropolises on Earth. They are separated by thousands of miles of land and sea, and thousands of years of history. They were born of vastly different cultures under different skies and for different purposes. Yet they are united by the sense of awe, terror, and profound mystery they inspire in all who dare to enter their domains. Each is a city of the dead, but each holds a very different kind of darkness, a unique flavor of fear. First, we will descend deep into the belly of one of the world's most beautiful and vibrant cities. Beneath the romantic, gaslit streets of Paris, France, lies a dark, inverted mirror image, the Paris catacombs. This is not a city of grand tombs for the elite. It is a sprawling, subterranean empire of the anonymous dead, a labyrinthine kingdom built from the bones of 6 million souls. Its horror is one of overwhelming scale, of absolute claustrophobia, and of the chilling, cautionary tales of those who have ventured too far into its eternal darkness and have simply never returned. Then, our journey will take us across the azure expanse of the Mediterranean, to the sun-scorched, silent sands of Egypt, to a barren, wind-swept canyon on the west bank of the mighty Nile. This is the Valley of the Kings. This is a necropolis of unimaginable wealth, of divine power, and of deadly, whispered secrets. It is a hidden city of subterranean palaces built for the god-kings of the New Kingdom, the mighty pharaohs of Egypt's golden age. Its horror is not one of anonymity, but of terrifying specificity. It is a place of powerful, ancient curses, of vengeful, unseen guardians, and of a potent, ritualized magic said to protect the slumber of kings for all eternity. We will conduct a deep, comparative exploration of these two incredible locations. The catacombs, a chaotic, democratic city built from the common man's bones, and the valley, an opulent, highly ordered city built to house the divine king's treasures. We will excavate their histories, from their surprising origins to their legendary statuses. We will walk their haunted corridors, examining the eyewitness accounts and the modern-day mysteries that prove their power has not faded with the passage of time. And we will be forced to ask the most fundamental question of all: what happens when we disturb the dead? And do the dead, whether they be a commoner in a Parisian pit or a king in a golden sarcophagus, ever truly rest in peace? So take a deep, final breath of the air of the living world. Our descent begins now into the cities of the dead. Our first destination lies hidden, like a dark secret, beneath a city that is a global synonym for life, love, and light. Paris, the city of grand boulevards, of revolutionary art, of breathtaking romance. But this is a city of layers. And beneath the feet of the millions of tourists and lovers who walk its cobblestone streets, there is another Paris. A dark, silent, and sprawling city that stretches for hundreds of kilometers in a tangled, unmapped web. This is the empire of the dead, the Paris catacombs. To truly understand how this subterranean world of bone came to be, we must transport ourselves back to the 18th century. Paris was a city choking on its own history. It was a medieval metropolis straining to cope with a modern, exploding population. And nowhere was this strain more apparent, more grotesque, and more dangerous than in its cemeteries. For nearly 1,000 years, the city's main cemetery had been Les Innocents, the cemetery of the Holy Innocents. It was not on the outskirts of town. It was in the very heart of Paris, right next to the bustling central marketplace of Les Halles. It was the final resting place for millions of Parisians from all walks of life. And it was full, dangerously, disgustingly, catastrophically full. Imagine a space meant for a few thousand bodies being forced to contain a few million. The graves were not neat, single plots. They were massive, open pits, charniers, where bodies were piled on top of each other, sometimes reaching a depth of over 30 feet. When a pit was full, it was covered with a thin layer of soil, and a new generation of dead was layered on top. Over the centuries, the ground level of the cemetery itself had risen more than 6 feet above the surrounding streets, a literal, tangible mountain of the dead. And this mountain was beginning to poison the living. In the 18th century, the stench of rot and decay emanating from Les Innocents was so overwhelming that local shopkeepers claimed their businesses were being ruined. Perfumers complained that the fetid air was tainting their delicate scents. Wine merchants claimed their cellars were producing sour, undrinkable wine. But it was more than just a bad smell. The ground was so saturated with decomposing organic matter, a substance grimly referred to as corpse fat, that it began to leach into the local water supply. The water in nearby wells became toxic, a foul brew that spread disease. The final, horrifying straw came in the spring of 1780. After a long period of particularly heavy rain, a basement wall of a residential building that adjoined the cemetery collapsed under the immense pressure of the waterlogged, corpse-filled earth. A torrent of mud, decaying corpses, and disarticulated bones flooded the cellar of a private home. The city had a public health crisis of apocalyptic proportions. It was literally drowning in its own dead. A solution was needed, a radical and unprecedented one. And the solution lay directly beneath their feet. For centuries, Paris had been built from its own foundation. Beneath the city lay a vast, ancient network of limestone quarries, dating back to the time of the Romans. These tunnels, a subterranean world of galleries and chambers, had provided the stone that built Notre Dame, the Louvre, and the city itself. By the 18th century, many of these quarries were abandoned, forgotten, and dangerously unstable, a secret, sprawling underworld. The city authorities, led by Police Lieutenant General Alexander Lenoir, devised a plan of breathtaking ambition and macabre genius. They would empty the overflowing cemeteries of Paris and move the bones into the silent, waiting quarries. The task was monumental, a logistical and psychological challenge of immense scale. And it had to be done in secret. The public, deeply religious and superstitious, would never accept the mass disinterment of their ancestors. So, beginning in 1785 and continuing for decades, a clandestine operation took place under the cover of darkness. Every night, after the city had gone to sleep, convoys of horse-drawn carts, draped in heavy black cloth to avoid alarming the public, would trundle through the silent streets. They would go to the overflowing cemeteries, where teams of workers would begin the grim task of exhuming the millions of bodies. They would load the bones onto the carts and transport them to the entrance of the old quarries, a site known as the Burier Diafer, or the Gate of Hell. At this entrance, the bones were blessed by priests in a nightly ceremony, a small concession to sanctity in a profoundly unsanctified act. Then, they were unceremoniously tipped down a mineshaft, tumbling into the darkness of the tunnels below. At first, it was just a chaotic pile, a disorganized jumble of femurs, skulls, ribs, and vertebrae. The primary goal was sanitation, not sentiment. But as the project continued, the man placed in charge, a visionary mine inspector named Louis-Étienne Héricart de Thury, decided that this new city of the dead deserved a sense of order, a sense of solemn, artistic dignity. He was not just clearing a problem, he was creating a monument. He took on the immense task of transforming the chaotic bone quarry into a true necropolis, a morbid and philosophical work of art. Under his direction, from around 1810 onwards, workers began the painstaking process of arranging the bones. They sorted the skeletal remains. They took the long bones, the femurs and tibias, and stacked them into dense, intricately patterned retaining walls, creating an effect that is both horrifying and strangely beautiful. And into these walls of bone, they artfully arranged the skulls, creating decorative patterns, crosses, hearts, circles, and other macabre designs. Héricart de Thury also had his workers search the cemeteries for old, beautiful tombstones and decorations, which he moved into the catacombs, creating small chapels and monuments within the ossuaries. He added stone plaques, engraved with morbid, philosophical, and religious inscriptions, poetry from the great writers of the age, and musings on the nature of life, death, and vanity. One of the most famous inscriptions, placed above the entrance to the main ossuary, greets all who enter with a stark and chilling warning: Arrête, c'est ici l'empire de la mort. Stop, this is the empire of death. It is a threshold, a clear demarcation between the world of the living and the eternal kingdom of the dead. For over 30 years, the bones of an estimated 6 million Parisians were moved from over a dozen cemeteries into this subterranean labyrinth. The catacombs became the final, anonymous resting place for people from every walk of life, every era of French history. The bones of the rich and the poor, of saints and sinners, of revolutionaries and royalty, all became indistinguishable bricks in this new, democratic city of death. The bones of historical figures like the writers Charles Perrault, who gave us the fairy tales of Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood, and François Rabelais, the great satirist, are mixed in with the bones of Maximilien Robespierre, the architect of the Reign of Terror, and his many victims. All are equal in the empire of the dead. Today, a small 1-mile section of the catacombs is open to the public as a museum. It is one of Paris's most popular and profoundly unsettling tourist attractions. To enter, you descend a long, tight spiral staircase, 131 steps down, leaving the noise and light of the living world behind. You enter a cool, damp, and silent world of stone and bone. You walk through long, dark, claustrophobic corridors, the air thick with the smell of wet earth and something else, something ancient and indescribable. And then you pass under that fateful inscription and enter the ossuaries. The effect is immediate and overwhelming. You are surrounded, on all sides, by walls built from the remains of human beings. Millions of them. It is impossible not to feel the sheer, crushing weight of the history, the tragedy, and the loss contained in this space. It is a profoundly moving and deeply terrifying experience. But the public section, as vast as it feels, is just a tiny, sanitized fraction of the true catacombs. The full network of tunnels, known as the Carrières de Paris, is estimated to stretch for over 200 kilometers, a vast, unmapped, and highly dangerous labyrinth that snakes beneath the entire city. Access to these off-limits sections is strictly illegal, but this has not stopped a thriving, secret subculture of urban explorers, known as cataphiles, from making this forbidden kingdom their playground. And it is in these illegal, unlit, and unmonitored tunnels that the true horror of the catacombs resides. This is where the legends and the modern mysteries are born. The cataphiles are a secret society. They have their own maps, their own hidden entrances through manholes, metro tunnels, and secret doors in basements. They have their own rules and their own code of ethics. They explore the hidden chambers, hold secret, candlelit parties, create stunning underground art galleries, and sometimes they get lost. And to be lost in the catacombs is a fate more terrifying than a simple death. The tunnels are a disorienting, three-dimensional maze. Many are flooded, forcing explorers to wade through chest-deep, freezing water. There are no lights. The silence is absolute, so profound that you can hear the blood pulsing in your own ears. It is frighteningly easy to become disoriented, to take a wrong turn, to lose your way. And if your flashlight dies, you are plunged into a darkness so complete, so total, so profound, that it is said to strip you of your sanity. The most famous modern legend of the catacombs is a found footage story that emerged on the internet in the early 2000s, becoming one of the first viral paranormal videos. The story goes that a group of explorers, or perhaps a documentary crew, found a video camera lying on the floor of a deep, unexplored tunnel. The camera was caked in mud, but the footage inside was intact. The video, which can still be found online, shows an unidentified man exploring the catacombs. At first, he seems confident, moving with a purpose, likely an experienced cataphile. He navigates the tunnels, points out strange markings on the walls. But as he goes deeper, his demeanor changes. The atmosphere of the video shifts from one of adventure to one of growing dread. He seems to become disoriented, lost. His breathing becomes ragged and panicked. He consults his map, but it seems useless. He starts to move faster. Then he begins to run, his camera light bouncing wildly off the endless walls of bone. The audio is filled with his terrified, choking gasps. It is clear he is running from something. What he is running from, we never see, but we can hear his terror. The final, heart-stopping moments of the footage show him dropping the camera. It falls to the floor, and the last thing we see is the camera's view of the tunnel floor, a jumble of bone and dirt, before the film cuts out. The man was never identified, and he was never found. He was simply swallowed by the darkness. While the authenticity of this found footage is heavily debated, many believe it to be a clever hoax created by filmmakers. It speaks to a very real and ever-present fear. People have gotten lost and died in the catacombs. In 2017, 2 teenagers were lost in the tunnels for 3 agonizing days before they were miraculously found by rescue dogs, suffering from severe hypothermia and psychological distress. And there is the famous historical case of Philibert Aspert, a doorkeeper of the Val de Grace Hospital, who, in 1793, famously got lost in the catacombs, supposedly while searching for a hidden cache of chartreuse liquor. His body wasn't found until 11 years later, just a few feet from an exit, identified only by the set of hospital keys on his belt. Beyond the very real physical danger of getting lost, the catacombs are, unsurprisingly, said to be one of the most intensely haunted locations in the world. Visitors to both the legal and illegal sections have reported a plethora of paranormal experiences. A very common report is that of being touched by unseen hands, of feeling a cold breath on the back of the neck, or the sensation of a skeletal finger tracing a line down your spine. People have reported hearing disembodied whispers, faint moans, and even clear voices that seem to call their name from the darkness. as if luring them deeper into the maze. Some cataphiles, the people who know these tunnels best, speak of a palpable presence, a feeling of being watched or followed, especially in the deeper, more remote tunnels. There are persistent stories of shadowy figures seen flitting between the pillars of bone, and of strange, floating orbs of light that seem to lead explorers astray, towards dead ends or dangerous collapses. Some even believe that the catacombs have their own guardian, a single, powerful spirit or entity that protects the dead and actively punishes those who would disturb their rest. The most terrifying stories from the cataphiles are not just of seeing or hearing things, but of a feeling of profound disorientation and a sudden, inexplicable urge to run, a primal terror that seems to emanate from the walls themselves. The Paris catacombs are a unique kind of necropolis. This horror is not one of divine curses or royal vengeance. It is a horror of scale, of anonymity, and of the crushing, claustrophobic weight of 6 million dead souls packed into a dark, subterranean maze. It is the fear of being lost, not just in a physical sense, but of being lost in a sea of forgotten humanity, of having your own identity dissolved in an ocean of bone. It is a place that forces you to confront the stark, simple reality that one day, you too will be nothing more than bone, perhaps just another anonymous brick in the silent, eternal empire of death. From the damp, democratic darkness beneath Paris, our journey now takes us to a place of polar opposite character. We travel across the sea, to the dry, sun-scorched, and profoundly silent land of Egypt. We are going to the west bank of the River Nile, across from the ancient city of Thebes, the site of modern-day Luxor. Here, nestled in a desolate, wind-swept canyon of limestone cliffs that bake under a relentless sun, lies a necropolis of unimaginable wealth, of divine power, and of deadly whispered secrets. This is the Valley of the Kings. This is not a city for the common man. This was the exclusive, highly secret burial ground for the god-kings of Egypt's new kingdom, the golden age of its empire, from roughly 1550 to 1070 BC. For nearly 500 years, the most powerful men in the known world, the pharaohs, chose this isolated, sun-blasted valley as their gateway to the afterlife, their mansion of 1,000,000 years. The decision to move the royal burials from the iconic pyramids to this remote valley was a deeply strategic one. The pharaohs of the Old and Middle Kingdoms had been buried in the Great Pyramids, near Giza and Saqqara. But the pyramids, for all their architectural and spiritual grandeur, were giant, unmissable advertisements. They screamed to the world, "Here lies a king, and here lies all his treasure." And for thousands of years, they had been systematically looted by tomb robbers, who braved the curses and the complex internal architecture to steal the gold and desecrate the royal mummies. The ambitious pharaohs of the New Kingdom, rulers like Thutmose, Ramesses, and Seti, learned from this. They sought a more discreet, more secure location. They chose the Theban Hills, a place dominated by a natural, pyramid-shaped peak known locally as Elkern, or the Horn, which they saw as a sacred, divinely provided pyramid. The valley was remote, surrounded by steep cliffs, and easily guarded. Its limestone rock was perfect for carving deep, complex, and, most importantly, hidden tombs. The plan was to create a secret necropolis, its entrances sealed, plastered over, and hidden by sand and rock, to protect the bodies and the fabulous treasures of the pharaohs for all eternity. For 500 years, a highly specialized and elite community of craftsmen, artists, and laborers known as the Deir el-Medina lived and worked in total secrecy. They were the tomb builders. They were quarantined from the general population, their lives dedicated to a single sacred task. They would spend their entire lives carving these incredible mansions of eternity into the living rock. Each tomb was a complex, magical machine designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey to the afterlife. They consisted of long, steeply descending corridors, false chambers designed to fool robbers, deep pits, and finally, a grand, vaulted burial chamber, the House of Gold. Every inch of the walls and ceilings of these corridors and chambers was covered with the most incredibly vibrant and detailed magical texts and images from sacred books like the Book of the Dead, the Amjuat, and the Litany of Ra. These were not just decorations. They were a magical engine, a divine GPS designed to protect the king, guide him through the 12 perilous gates of the underworld, defeat the serpent demon Apep, and ensure his triumphant rebirth as a god in the morning sky. The burial chamber itself would contain the pharaoh's mummified body, the physical vessel for his eternal soul, encased in a series of nested coffins, the innermost often of solid gold. And surrounding him would be everything he could possibly need or want in the next life. Gilded furniture, chests filled with priceless jewelry, alabaster jars of wine and perfumed oils, weapons, chariots, statues of gods and servants, and even his favorite board games. It was a treasure trove of staggering value, both materially and spiritually. But despite all the secrecy, all the hidden entrances, and all the magical protections, the tomb robbers still came. The lure of gold was too great. Over the millennia, driven by greed or desperation, almost every single one of the 63 known tombs in the Valley of the Kings was discovered and plundered. The entrances were breached, the treasures were stolen, and the royal mummies were often desecrated, their precious wrappings torn apart in the frantic search for hidden jewels. By the time modern archaeologists arrived in the 19th and 20th centuries, the valley was thought to have given up all its secrets. It was a place of ghosts, an empty treasure chest. And then, on November 4th, 1922, a determined, and some would say obsessed, English archaeologist named Howard Carter made the single greatest archaeological discovery in human history. After years of fruitless, expensive searching, funded by his wealthy patron, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, Carter and his team uncovered a hidden flight of stairs leading down into the rock, buried beneath the rubble of a later tomb. He had found the undiscovered, and almost completely intact, tomb of a minor, largely forgotten boy king from the 18th dynasty named Tutankhamun. The discovery of KV-62, the tomb of Tutankhamun, was a global sensation. It was the 1920s, a time of great social change and a thirst for the exotic, and the world was utterly captivated. The media followed every moment of the excavation. The world was mesmerized by the images of Carter peering through a small hole into the tomb's antechamber for the first time, of the golden shrines, the jewel-encrusted thrones, the alabaster canopic jars, and, of course, the magnificent 24-pound solid gold death mask of the young king. But with this incredible discovery, with the unsealing of a tomb that had been silent for over 3,000 years, came the birth of a new, and far more sinister, legend, the curse of the pharaohs. The idea of a curse protecting the tombs was not new. Ancient Egyptian tombs often contained hieroglyphic inscriptions with dire warnings for anyone who would disturb the dead. A typical inscription from a private tomb might read, "As for any man who shall enter this tomb in his impurity, I shall wring his neck as a bird's." Or, from the tomb of the vizier Ankh-Mahor, "As for all men who shall enter this my tomb, I shall seize him like a wild fowl. He shall be judged for it." The curse on Tutankhamun's tomb was said to be even more potent. "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." At first, the world, and the excavation team, laughed off the idea of a curse. But then, the people associated with the opening of the tomb began to die, often in strange and unsettling ways. The first and most famous victim was the man who paid for it all, Lord Carnarvon. Just a few months after entering the tomb, in April 1923, Carnarvon died in his room at the Continental Savoy Hotel in Cairo. The official cause of death was mundane. He had been bitten on the cheek by a mosquito. The bite became infected, and he later accidentally sliced it open while shaving. He developed erysipelas, an acute skin infection, which led to blood poisoning and pneumonia. He died in a high fever, delirious. But the circumstances surrounding his death were anything but mundane. The story became a media frenzy. At the exact moment of his death, all the lights in Cairo reportedly went out for several minutes due to a mysterious power failure. And back in England, at his ancestral home, Highclere Castle, his beloved fox terrier, Susie, let out a final mournful howl and dropped dead. The connection was too perfect. The newspapers screamed, "The curse of Tutankhamun!" They fueled the fire by pointing out that an autopsy of the boy king's mummy had revealed a lesion on his left cheek, in the exact same spot as Carnarvon's fatal mosquito bite. The list of curse victims grew with each passing year, eagerly chronicled by the press. George J. Gould, a wealthy American railroad magnate who was a friend of Carnarvon's, visited the tomb in 1923, fell ill with a fever almost immediately, and died a few months later. Arthur Mace, a member of Carter's core excavation team who delivered the final blow to the wall of the burial chamber, complained of exhaustion and died in 1928, supposedly of arsenic poisoning. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who X-rayed Tutankhamun's mummy before it was unwrapped, died in 1924 from a mysterious illness. A British industrialist named Joel Wolfe visited the tomb, fell into a fever upon his return to London, and died. By 1929, the newspapers had attributed over a dozen deaths to the curse. Was the curse real? The scientific and skeptical explanation is, of course, a resounding no. A statistical analysis of the lifespans of the 26 people who were present at the opening of the tomb shows that they lived, on average, to be over 70 years old, a perfectly normal lifespan for their social class at the time. Howard Carter, the man who was first to enter and who spent a decade cataloging its contents, lived for another 17 years, dying at the age of 64. Lord Carnarvon was already in poor health before he even went to Egypt, suffering from chronic lung problems from a car accident. The other deaths can be explained by the poor sanitation of the era, the prevalence of diseases like typhoid and malaria, and simple, tragic coincidence, all amplified by a press corps with an insatiable appetite for a sensational story. Some have proposed more exotic but still scientific explanations. Perhaps the sealed tombs contain dormant, toxic mold spores or bacteria, like Aspergillus niger, that had been trapped for thousands of years, and which could be deadly to modern people with no immunity. It's an intriguing idea, but one for which there is little concrete evidence. But the legend of the curse persists, because it speaks to a deeper, more primal fear. It is the fear of retribution, the idea that the ancient dead have the power to protect their sacred spaces and to punish those who would desecrate them. The Valley of the Kings is not haunted in the same way as the Paris catacombs. You don't hear stories of disembodied whispers or shadowy figures in its tombs. The horror here is more targeted, more personal, more elegant. It is the horror of a powerful ancient magic, a curse designed by god-kings to follow you out of the tomb, out of the valley, and across the world, to find you in your own time. Modern visitors to the valley still report strange experiences. A common feeling is one of being watched, of a heavy, oppressive atmosphere, particularly in the deeper, less visited tombs. Some have reported sudden feelings of nausea, dizziness, or inexplicable, irrational panic that forces them to flee back into the sunlight. There are even stories from the local Egyptian guards who watch over the valley at night. They speak of seeing strange, silent lights moving among the tombs, of equipment malfunctioning, and of hearing sounds, like the distant chanting of ancient priests, echoing from the empty, silent cliffs. They believe that the spirits of the pharaohs and the powerful magical guardians assigned to protect them are still on duty. Now, let us place these two incredible cities of the dead side by side, like two ancient skulls on an examiner's table. The Paris catacombs and the Valley of the Kings. On the surface, they could not be more different. The catacombs are a product of chaos, of urban crisis, of desperate necessity. They are a necropolis of the common man, a vast, anonymous democracy of bone. The 6 million souls interred there are stripped of their individuality, their stories erased, their very skeletons used as macabre building materials. The horror is one of overwhelming numbers, of the crushing weight of a forgotten multitude. The fear is of claustrophobia, of being lost, of having your own identity dissolved in an ocean of anonymous death. The paranormal activity is residual, chaotic, and ambient whispers, touches, shadows. It is the collective psychic scream of a city's worth of dead. The Valley of the Kings, by contrast, is a product of immense order, of meticulous planning, and of divine right. It is a necropolis of the individual, of the God-King. Each tomb is a bespoke universe, a palace of eternity designed for a single, powerful soul. The identity of the dead is paramount. Their names are written 1,000 times on the walls. The horror is not of anonymity, but of absolute, focused power. It is the fear of a specific, intelligent, and vengeful entity. The paranormal activity is not ambient. It is targeted. It is a curse, a magical weapon designed by the most powerful priests and magicians of the ancient world to follow a specific person with a specific, deadly intent. Yet, for all their profound differences, they are united by a fundamental transgressive truth. They are both places where the living have trespassed, with profound consequences, into the domain of the dead. In Paris, the trespass was one of practicality, of moving the dead to make room for the living, a civic necessity that became a macabre spectacle. In Egypt, the trespass was one of greed, of science, and of curiosity, of breaking into the sacred houses of eternity to steal their treasures and their secrets. And in both places, it seems, the dead have not taken kindly to the disturbance. So what are we to make of the enduring power of these places? Are the ghosts of the catacombs and the curses of the Valley real? Or are they simply powerful, elaborate projections of our own deep-seated anxieties about death, the afterlife, and the desecration of the human body? The skeptical view, as always, argues for a rational, psychological explanation. The hauntings of the catacombs are a product of a terrifying, sensory-depriving environment, total darkness, silence, claustrophobia combined with the immense power of suggestion. The Curse of the Pharaohs is a media creation, a compelling narrative woven from coincidence, a misunderstanding of statistics, and a public hungry for romance and mystery. There is nothing truly paranormal in either location, only human psychology at work. A more nuanced theory might suggest a psychological or energetic explanation. Perhaps these places, due to their very nature and purpose, have become powerful psychic resonators. The catacombs resonate with the collective, chaotic grief of millions. To enter it is to tune your own consciousness into that overwhelming frequency of sorrow and fear. The Valley of the Kings resonates with a different kind of energy, the focused, ritualistic, and magical intent of an entire civilization. The ancient Egyptians poured all of their spiritual and magical knowledge into these tombs. They believed, with every fiber of their being, that their spells, their rituals, and their curses had real, tangible power. And perhaps belief itself, when focused with such intensity for so long, creates its own reality. The curse might not be magic in the way a pharaoh understood it, but a powerful psychic field, an informational virus that can affect those who enter it with disrespect or an open, vulnerable mind. And finally, there is the simple, chilling possibility that the stories are true, that the spirits of 6 million Parisians do linger in their subterranean maze, their collective consciousness a disoriented, whispering fog, and that the ghostly guardians of the pharaohs, powered by ancient and potent magic, do still watch over their golden tombs, that when we break the seal and disturb the slumber of the dead, we do so at our own peril. These two great cities of the dead serve as profound and terrifying monuments. They are vast, dark libraries whose books are made of bone and gold, and whose stories are of life, death, and the enduring, perhaps unanswerable mystery of what comes next. They are a testament to the fact that while we may build our cities for the living, the dead have their own empires, and their borders are not always clearly marked. And now I want to open the crypt and ask for your thoughts. What do you believe is the true nature of these cities of the dead? Are they simply fascinating historical sites with spooky stories attached? Or do you believe they hold a genuine, tangible paranormal power? Which do you find more terrifying? The anonymous, overwhelming horror of the catacombs, or the specific, targeted power of the Valley of the Kings? Have you ever visited a place that felt like a city of the dead? A place with a palpable, heavy energy that you couldn't explain? Share your experiences and your theories in the comments below. Let's continue this exploration together. If you found this journey into the underworld to be a compelling one, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support is what allows us to keep unearthing these incredible, timeless mysteries. And be sure to click that notification bell so you won't be left behind on our next expedition into the shadows. Thank you for walking with me tonight through the realms of the departed. Until next time, remember to tread lightly. You never know whose tomb you might be standing on.